Hey everyone, welcome to the 50th episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Michael.
And I'm Molly.
I cannot even believe we've done this for 50 episodes, 50 weeks. And this is our last episode of season one. So we will be back in just a few weeks after this for the start of season two. We'll have some little changes and some more social media content that we're going to be adding, which is really exciting for our new season. So we're pumped for that. And speaking of pumped, why don't we start with talking about some Vanderpump rules this episode? We are going to be doing a Bravo trio here, Vanderpump rules, followed by The Valley, and then followed by Summer House. So let's get started with Vanderpump rules. You ready, Molly?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So we talked a little bit about Vanderpump after the premiere episode of this season. So now that we're a little over halfway through the season, Molly, what are your thoughts on the season so far overall?
I'm really enjoying this season. I feel like after everything that was Scandal last season, we knew that was going to be crossed over into this season, but I didn't know entirely like how it was going to be, like with the filming and who was going to be in which scenes and all that stuff. And I feel like we've gotten a lot of drama and more than just the Scandal side of things. Like we've seen a lot more of other relationships too, which has been interesting to see how those have evolved and everything post Scandal. So I'm really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I think like the last few weeks have really picked up. I think the first I don't know, 7 or 8 episodes, I guess, it was starting to get a little bit I don't even know the right word for it. Just like a little bit frustrating to watch, I think, because it really felt like the whole show was kind of about giving Tom this redemption arc, and that was very frustrating to watch. But now that, yeah, we have seen some drama happen that was not Scandival related, it's starting to get a lot more exciting and a lot of this we didn't like. I had no idea, and we'll talk about this, but like no clue about the Katie and Max hookup. Like that was not
Yeah.
spoiled in the media. That was a
Uh,
total surprise. So that made me give me a lot of hope that in the coming weeks, I know when Andy Cohen, after he filmed the reunion, or I guess on before he filmed the reunion, he was saying that he watched the last half of the season and how there are a lot of surprises to come, and it's so good. And I think to a lot of people were like, is it really though? Like the first half has been a little bit, I guess predictable, you could say, based on everything that got spoiled during filming. But this gave me a lot of hope that there's more stuff like this to come. So yeah, I'm excited. I think that now we're in a good place with it, and excited for what's to come. Now, as we said, a lot of the season so far has been kind of this debate about Ariana and her boundaries with her friends, especially the rest of the female cast, about whether or not they should or have the right to forgive Sandoval, and still maintain a friendship with Ariana. So, do you think that Ariana's line is she's being too firm with her line in terms of that, or does she have that right to set those boundaries and remove herself from a friendship with somebody who decides to start a new friendship with Sandoval after all this?
I personally think it's a little harsh for her, like in certain ways that she's coming across in terms of those friendships. Like obviously, like she doesn't want to lose those friends, so, and those friends don't want to lose her. But I think that in some ways, like with Sheena and Lala, like they do have those previous relationships that like they want to keep if they can, and then it's like but then Ariana is telling them it's a deal breaker for her if they become friends with him, I think is a little bit too harsh. Like they can all be civil, I think, and like hang out in different settings and not have to overlap like that. But I don't think it's like obviously, yes, Sandoval is a terrible person, but I think that like in general, the way that it's coming across might be a little bit too much.
I think what we have to remember with this is the timeline of it all.
Yeah.
Because so Scandal broke in March. I think it was March 1st when it technically happened, and then a couple days later when the news dropped. The reunion for season 10 filmed at the very end of March. And that was, as we know, like crazy, like toxic, I think is probably the right word. And then the rest of the season aired. Reunion didn't air until June of that year. Then they just immediately went right back into filming in July. So Ariana hasn't had a chance to breathe since all this happened at this point. Like, I think what we're watching now happened in August. So that's only what 5 months after this news happened. And in between that time, the show's season 10 was airing. Like, couldn't get away from it. And I think that Ariana is just kind of at this point where she's like, I don't want to see him. Like this is my job. Like making a lot of money to be on this show, and I get it. Like, under normal circumstances, the whole point of the show is to put yourself in a room with people on a day-to-day basis who you probably wouldn't normally want to be in a room with and to see what happens. And, there's been a lot of shows where this has happened and divides get too far. People refuse to start filming with each other and then, can't move forward with that. But I think we need to give her a little bit of grace with her harsh reactions, seemingly, because this got to like an extreme level of news coverage that no other Bravo show has ever gotten to before. And I just think that she's sick of having to hear about it and talk about it and like her friends coming to her and being like, "Hi, I know that what he did is so bad, but like, can I be friends with him again?" Like, it's like, don't come to me with that. Like,
Yeah.
why come to her with that? Like, do what you want to do. And then I think Ariana, if she doesn't feel comfortable sharing things with you as she would have normally, if, as close friend,
Mhm.
then she'll back off from that friendship for a little bit or kind of set, some boundaries. And maybe over time, those boundaries will go down. She'll feel a little more comfortable with that. And I think that I'll be curious to see what she's like at the reunion that just filmed. And so now we'll see where she's at a year out. But at this moment during filming, I feel like it was so close to when it happened, and there was so little time that she had to really process and grieve that I'm willing to, to say that I understand where she's coming from, and I don't think that, in my opinion, for that time period, that she's necessarily being too harsh.
Yeah, I was forgetting about the time frame there. I think because it is so recent, like obviously time heals. So like I think it's still just the such a quick turnaround that it's still very hidden in her head of all the things that are going on that like she doesn't want to keep talking about it or like hearing about it. So I definitely think that's a part of why it's coming across as maybe like she just is getting fed up with it all.
Yeah. And I think that's why it can be frustrating with like the amount of time it takes between filming something and it airing. Is that
Mm.
like in our minds we're like, why haven't you gotten over it? It's been a year. But it really hasn't been, and that's hard for a lot of viewers to understand that there is such a time because you're having to put yourself back in that moment of like August 2023, which at this point has been quite a while. But that you kind of have to keep reminding yourself like it hasn't been a year. It's only been 5 months.
Yeah.
So that can be difficult to do. But we talked about this a little bit, but Sheena and Lala, I feel like are the two that specifically are having a hard time seemingly kind of being caught in the middle between Sandoval and Ariana. How do you think that each of them have kind of navigated the season so far and being in the group with both of them together?
Yeah, it's really been interesting, like seeing how forgiving they seem to be already with Sandoval. Um, it kind of like also not speaking of the timelines, it kind of feels like they almost like forgot about it really quickly in a way. Like they were so, so harsh against him. And then now flipping back to being like, oh, well, actually, he's not that bad. Like he could have like done worse. Or like, I don't know what they're thinking, like whatever they're trying to like put up in their minds of like, oh, maybe we can be friends. Like he didn't do this to me. But like in general, like obviously, like also for this show, I feel like there's a part of it like they don't want to just be always so negative against him and like trying to understand if he is being forgiving and like trying to see how he's going to be as a friend to them now like post everything that happened, but I don't know if they're like sustainable friendships that they're trying to build with him, but I just feel like they might be a little bit like forgetting about some of the past.
Yeah, I think that there's probably kind of a couple things happening here. I think Sheena, I feel like when this all first happened, everyone was like, "Who's going to be the first to forgive Sandoval?" And everyone said Sheena, because that's Sheena's MO. Like she will flip flop around every season, and like she can't stay mad at anyone. And 1 year she's really close to this person, the next year she's really close to that one, and isn't talking. Like she's very much like I think that she has a very good heart and means well all the time and wants to do the right thing, but I think she can very easily kind of let the audience influence her and let other people influence her and so I think that wasn't super surprising. And also Sheena did have a very close past friendship with Tom. Like, she's talked about it, I think, on the show this season, where she said that, Tom, when she first joined the group, all the girls were so mean to her. And then Tom was the one that kind of like brought her in. And Ariana wasn't even on the show at the time. Ariana didn't come until season 2. So that Tom was really the only one at that time who really gave her a chance. So I do understand that can be hard for somebody, and apparently he gave her money during COVID, and like, I think that's hard when you know that somebody did really nice things for you in the past. It's hard to kind of like just totally give them up and let that friendship go. But Lala, that I don't know if it's surprising to me necessarily because like I feel like she has this weird thing against Ariana and she's had it for years. But she's also had a lot against Tom, and she's never been friends with him really. Like maybe like her first season, like she was very like closer with Tom and Ariana, but I always felt like she was mostly close with Ariana and then like not really with Tom. But I don't know, for some reason I think that she maybe I don't think she's willing to give Ariana the same grace that she was asking for herself, like after she and Randall split. And it's kind of weird to me how like she can't see that this just happened to Ariana. Like, yes, you're over what like you're able to kind of move on from Randall and the anger that you've held towards him, but that happened like 2 years ago. Like, give Ariana that time to grieve and to allow time to let her move forward and not hold so much anger. Like the amount of anger that she had at that time, like was the same, if not more. So I don't know. That one's weird to me.
Yeah, I remember that being part of like that episode too when they were talking about how Lala and Tom weren't really that close before, so that was definitely like, oh, that's interesting here. But yeah, Sheena definitely makes more sense to me seeing how forgiving she is.
Yeah, definitely. Now we do have a newbie on the scene this season, to a certain extent. Um, we have Joe. Now, Joe is Schwartz's maybe not really live-in girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, maybe. We're not really clear on that.
Situationship.
Yeah, not totally defined clearly. But what do you think of Joe? Do you think that the girls have been too hard on her this season, or is it deserved considering how she navigated apparently knowing some things that were going on between Tom and Rachel at the time?
Yeah, I think that overall they're being too harsh on her. Like she didn't obviously, yeah, like she did have a say in like knowing, I guess, what was going on with the affair, but like now, like they're still holding that so strongly against her that like they're like calling her names, like all this stuff that like I don't think it's fair to like cross certain boundaries that they are doing. Like obviously you can be upset with someone, but like to the level that they're like projecting their feelings of her like so negatively, like I feel like they're taking it too far in that way.
I agree. I don't like anything shaming looks or anything like that, I think. And I think too, like I do get why they would kind of be side-eyeing her, especially Katie and Ariana,
Mhm.
because they were more directly impacted by Joe in terms of, with Katie, obviously Joe's relationship with Schwartz, and Katie thinking that Joe maybe I don't know if there was maybe some crossover there, or like I don't know what she's thinking exactly, but considering her relationship with Schwartz, I could see how Katie feels more directly impacted by Joe. And Ariana, of course, if Joe knew anything, and apparently she had been to Thanksgiving with Tom and Ariana when they were together, and like all this stuff that she had many opportunities to tell Ariana, or, to be just kind of sitting there knowing things and being at their house and not saying anything is pretty shitty. So I could
Yeah.
see that Ariana would feel some kind of way about Joe, but for the other girls who weren't directly impacted by it, I do think that probably they were being a little bit too hard on her. And that's not to say that they need to be best friends. Like I wouldn't necessarily trust her after knowing all that information, but to be kind of standing there and with a group of people just kind of like talking about her when she's standing 10 feet away, it doesn't look great, just at the very least. And so I could see how Joe would feel pretty unwelcome.
Yeah, and it also feels like in some of her interviews that she's saying like she thinks her and Schwartz are dating more so, or like that they like might be a thing, and then Schwartz is like, "Oh, we're friends who like occasionally will hook up," but like I feel like they have very different
Yeah,
views of what that relationship is. So it also makes me feel bad for her and like feeling like I mean we know that's not continuing really because that obviously is not they're not dating now, so
right.
like it's just kind of like she wasn't set up to be like she didn't have the great entrance into the show, I feel like, because of the circumstances that she is in.
Yeah. And Joe's been around for a little while because Joe used to be best friends with Kristen Doty, who obviously
Um,
now on the Valley. And Kristen's talked on her podcast a lot about Joe and their friendship, and that basically like they Joe completely stopped talking to Kristen as soon as she started talking to Schwartz. So I know that there is some history there that maybe we're not privy to all of the history, and maybe that has influenced, some of the girls feeling a certain type of way about Joe that we're not seeing. So I want to give that caveat that we're just going based on what we've seen and the information that we have, but there certainly is a strong possibility that there is information that would influence our opinion of Joe that we're not aware of.
for
So
sure.
now moving on to my favorite new addition for this season, Anne. Love Anne. I know that Anne, to connect her to your world, Molly, Anne has a current podcast with one of Nick Vile's former assistants called We Signed an NDA. So I've listened to a couple episodes of that, but not any really recent ones. I don't know if you have, but what are your thoughts on this storyline we've seen the last couple of weeks, where Anne wants to work for Ariana instead of Tom, and Ariana kind of did a little, I guess, like mini interview for Anne. I don't believe that she ends up working for Ariana, at least as of now. But do you think that Ariana should steal Anne from Tom? Do you think that is a maybe unnecessary line to cross, or does she have the right to do that, considering what.
Yeah, I really love watching Anna this season as well. I have not listened to the recent episodes of her podcast, but I definitely want to now, like that she's been having more of a presence in this show. But I feel like overall, like Anne can do whatever she wants, like with her job. Like if she isn't feeling like Sandoval is the right fit for her, like and she wants to work with Ariana, like that's what she wants to do. And I don't think it's necessarily like an Ariana versus Tom because I feel like Ariana even just asked her, like, do you have anyone in your network? She wasn't explicitly saying to her, I want you. It was
Mm.
just Anne who voiced that back, being like, well, I want to be in the running for this. Um, and then hearing, we didn't see the conversation that Tom and Anne had, like after the fact of him overhearing the conversation that she was having with Ariana, that was like basically like, oh, like maybe I'm gonna work for you. So then she started crying and all that stuff. So I feel bad that Anne is like feeling so emotional with however Tom was treating her. So I definitely think like she should work for Ariana if she has the opportunity.
I think it certainly would be a better job for her. I'd
Yeah.
much rather have Ariana as a boss than Tom Sandoval. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that look, Ariana, like she said, Tom didn't consider her feelings when he did what he did, so why should she consider Tom's feelings here? I get that. But I do think that look, at a certain point, I feel like if I were Ariana, I would just kind of want to avoid having any sort of contact with him, any sort of ties to him, and doing something like this obviously is going to trigger him, and it might just kind of make him retaliate in some other way and make her life more difficult. And like I would just, I think if I were her, I would do what, I think she ended up doing and not hiring Anne and just, at least for right now, in a few months, like once they move out, once she and Tom have zero ties to each other anymore, then if she wants to hire Anne, go for it. But I think at this moment, when they're still sharing a house, like, I don't think I would personally, but if she decided to, I would fully support
Yeah, that would I forgot about that fact that like literally it's like she's still coming to the same house
it.
that she'd be if
Exactly.
she was at. Which is kind of messy, but also I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of messy, their house or their rooms at least, very messy. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of commentary on that online. Now moving over to Katie Maloney. Do you think that she was hypocritical for hooking up with Max, which is Tom Schwartz's best friend, when she was so upset with Schwartz last season for kissing Rachel due to the fact that Rachel was a part of the friend group and they had this agreement to not hook up within the friend group? Do you think that was hypocritical, or, considering what Schwartz did, does she have the right to go ahead and do that?
I think that that situation is all just kind of complicated mess. But I don't think Katie should have done that. But also, like honestly, Schwartz like kind of had it coming for him if he's like done that in the past, like kind of thing. If like Katie was being like Katie just wanted a sense of revenge, I think, over Schwartz, and that's why she did it. Like it wasn't like, which obviously is not like healthy going about it, but it did get a response out of him, and then he's like, well, good for you. It's funny because he even was like, I think this made us closer. So, which is funny. But I think that yes, Katie can be hypocritical with how she is in terms of the reactions she's had over like when Schwartz has made out with someone. Like also hearing how he made out with Sheena, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that situation like definitely shook her, and that's why Katie felt so strongly wanting to go home with Max. So and especially the thing is just like that was like a one night stand situation. So it's not like it's actually gonna be more. So she just wanted to have some fun and kind of do it out of spite.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that it was one of those things where Katie was probably drunk one night, it seems like she and Max, I guess, have kind of been like a little flirtatious with each other. And I agree. I think that Katie probably felt like, in that moment, it was kind of the spontaneous thing where it was like, you know what? Tom cheated on me so many times when we were dating, married, maybe even, like, that she's known about, probably many she has not known about, which, again, she finds one out, this season. Um, and I think, she was like, well, you know what? We're not together anymore. Max is single, I'm single, why not? And I think she has every right to. You know what? She never cheated that we know of when she was with Tom. She never got that revenge at that point, so might as well do it now, with his best friend. And it is interesting though, because you know, uh, I don't know if you know this, Molly. So Max was a cast member on season 8 of Vanderpump Rules. He was just on for one season. And he was on the same season when Dana came on. And Dana is Katie Maloney's co-host on their new podcast. And Dana and Max at the time had a little thing with each other. And Dana now, I think, has spoken out on their most recent podcast with Katie. And Dana hates Max now. Like, she is like, I could not have a lower opinion of Max. Like, I cannot stand him. So it is interesting to me that, like, Dana has such a negative opinion of Max. And Dana is one of Katie's best friends. And Katie apparently doesn't share that same negative opinion of him. So I'm curious to know, like, what happen between Dana and Max that still makes her have such a low opinion of him, because I know like they didn't end that season on great terms, but that was years ago and like I didn't think it was that serious. So
Yeah.
I do feel like there's probably more there that I want to know what exactly happened there that made her hate him so much. But I don't know. Um,
I have
Now
the
we
backstory
mentioned this
there.
a little bit, but the other big reveal over the last few episodes was that Sheena and Schwartz had a little kiss, apparently around like 2013, 2014-ish. We don't know exactly when this was. It was in Vegas, apparently around an early season of Vanderpump Rules. And we know that because Katie and Schwartz were not engaged yet, which happened in season 3 and or season 4. And it was at the time when Sheena and Katie were not getting along, which was also that same first few seasons of Vanderpump. So, do you think that Sheena should have, or Schwartz obviously, should have told Katie at the time about it, or was it kind of small, innocent seeming enough from what we know that they were right to just kind of hide it?
Yeah, like looking back on the situation, it's obviously different than like when you're in it. Like I think in the moment, like they definitely felt like not sharing the information was gonna be better off in the long run, which perhaps maybe was because then like maybe if Katie would have found out, like maybe they would have broken up then and then well, I guess that could have saved them a marriage. But it's still like things could have ended differently. Like there's always like those what if feelings. But now like it's kind of just like a funny thing looking back on it for them to think, oh, like yes, this happened once, like we kissed, like nothing major, like it was just like a little thing. And so I think now, like because it's been so many years, because like they had such a good relationship, well, good relatively, that like lasted after that like it wasn't necessary to bring it up, like for Sheena to bring that up to Katie, even after they became closer, just because like it was just so old news at that point. Schwartz could have said something that, like, I feel like in that sense that like if you're dating someone, you want to be able to trust them, and like that's obviously a layer that like Katie could never trust him. So that was always a problem, but that would have definitely, if anyone were to tell Katie, like it should have been Schwartz.
Yeah.
Um, but then that didn't happen. So now looking back, I'm like, well, would have been interesting to hear if that did happen, like what would have gone down after that, but we'll never know.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It needed to be Schwartz who told Katie at the time, because Katie and Sheena hated each other at that time. Like, and if Sheena had told Katie that then, like, they would have never become friends. And they did shortly after that form a friendship when Katie, stopped being friends with Stassi for a time. Then she and Sheena got really close. So I don't think that would have ever happened. So Sheena probably did the right thing at that point. Like apparently, it doesn't sound like it was much. So it wasn't like they had a full on like affair or even like, a big thing. And so it's considering how small it was, Schwartz should have said something, but Sheena didn't. That wasn't her place to, impact that relationship in that way, I don't think. So, yeah, but it is just weird how like now so many years later that's still, becoming an issue now. And I don't even know why Schwartz said it. Like I don't quite understand like why he even had to bring that up to Lala. Uh, but it seems so random to me. But I'm glad it did because it gave us something else to talk about this season other than Scandal.
I know.
So I'm glad. Now, like you said, we're a little more than halfway through the season. I think we have maybe like 6, 7 episodes left. So what are your predictions for the rest of the season? Is anything else going to change in terms of anyone forgiving Tom or maybe kind of retreating backwards in terms of their forgiveness? Do you think any other big bombshells are going to come out? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I feel like maybe Lala will go back and not really become as close with Tom, but I think Sheena will still want to be forgiving, is my guess. And then I think Ariana is going to be more upset about that. But I also think I feel like we've seen actually like more scenes than I thought we were of Ariana and Tom in the same room. So I feel like that might lessen just because of how strongly we're seeing like how against that is or how against Ariana is to that. That like we were getting a decent bit of that, but now I feel like that's gonna not happen as often because I mean when they're in the same room, all they're doing is fighting with each other, and so it's just not enjoyable to watch that necessarily. So I hope that will be more so like not as much filming, or I don't know how that worked in the rest of the season, but we'll see how that goes. And isn't there that love triangle we're supposed to see with Katie Schwartz and some other girl? So yeah, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
That was
that's next episode. I think that starts.
yeah. So I'm excited for that drama because there's anything with Schwartz and Katie, I feel like is always fun to watch. So that will
That's
be
Sheena's babysitter or nanny for
oh,
Summer Moon. Yeah, I forgot her name, the girl with the red hair. Um yeah, so
Tori.
that's who kind of dates. What, sorry?
Her name Tori.
Yes, Tori.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Tori's the girl who kind of dates both Tom and Katie. And yeah, that starts in the next episode because so Bravo releases every week, like right after the episode airs, the first 7 minutes of the following week's episode. And so I
Mhm.
watched that, and that actually gave us quite a bit because it gave us stuff with that at the start of so Tori meets them at the beach and starts talking with Tom, and then we start to see the very kind of early seeds of that love triangle and say love triangle, but I think it's kind of more like a playful thing. It seems like kind of competitive between Schwartz and Katie for who can get her. Um,
Yeah. What do
but
you
we
think will
also
happen?
see a scene with Ariana, Lala, and Sheena where Ariana starts to get a kind of emotional, like really for the first time, like not angry emotional, but kind of like really crying about it and kind of grieving. Like uh, mostly, I think having to leave the house, it seems like. And she said like she put so much work into this house, and now like it kind of gives us a little bit of insight, I think, as to why it was so hard for like her to just move out and and leave all the furniture and everything behind. And everybody, not everybody, but there's a small, loud population of people who I think have been kind of like, really saying like that they cannot understand why Ariana didn't just immediately move out. And I think that this kind of gives a little bit of insight into that because it really does seem like that house meant a lot to her. And I think that seeing her emotional like that, I feel like might give Sheena and Lala a little bit of more understanding as to really like how Ariana's feeling about all of this. And I think they just hadn't maybe seen that type of emotion from her uh this season. It was just all the anger that came out, but I think her kind of letting her guard down a little bit might kind of make Sheena and Lala maybe come back to her side a little bit.
Mhm.
Now, I think Sheena probably stays there after that. I don't think Lala does because we know that in the finale, Lala, that because that comment that we've seen in all the trailers about how I've never seen anyone get cheated on and all of a sudden become God. And then we know that at the reunion, apparently Lala and Ariana get into a huge blowout argument. So it seems like Sheena and Ariana are in a good place, but Ariana and Lala are not. So I am really curious to see kind of how we get to that point and what goes down at that finale and read. So we'll see. We have a little ways to go for
Yes, for
that.
sure.
And then lastly, for Vanderpump Rules, before we move on, how does the show move forward for season 12? Because what we did this season is not sustainable, obviously. So do we think that anyone, specifically Ariana or Tom, will leave the show? Does anyone transition over to the Valley? Uh, do we move forward with this cast and see what happens? What do you think?
Well, I know we had some speculation that Ariana might be leaving because she's going to be the host of Love Island. So that would be interesting if that happens. I feel like either Tom or Ariana is going to leave. I just don't think both of them will be on the next season. And at this rate, I feel like Ariana's leaving because Tom is still just gung ho Vanderpump Rules. And Ariana's like, get me out of here. So I think that would be a big change, which obviously would be sad because I love Ariana, but like definitely she's gonna do what's best for her. But overall, like I don't know what other changes will be made. What about you?
I think I could see one of two things happening. I could see Ariana maybe coming back like part-time
Okay.
so that we still see her, she still films with the people that she would organically film with, but there wouldn't maybe be that pressure on her to film with Tom and film nearly as often. It kind of seems like this season she's been part-time a little bit. Like, she didn't go on the cast trip. She just kind of filmed with Katie mostly, and Sheena. Um, but I could see that where it's like, okay, we know that you're going to be going back and forth from Fiji at the time. Honestly, the host of Love Island doesn't do all that much, so like she could very easily go to Fiji, film, come back, film Vanderpump for a couple weeks or whatever, go back to Fiji. Like it would be a lot, but I mean, look at how busy she is now. I don't think that would be unheard of. She might have to miss some filming for it, and so I think maybe having her kind of part-time wouldn't be the worst idea, as long as they're still willing to pay her enough to make it worthwhile for her. And then at that point also, Tom, I think could feel maybe, not that I really care if he feels comfortable because he did it to himself, but I think that he maybe would feel a little bit like he doesn't have to be kind of so defensive all the time and angry, and like, we might be able to see everybody kind of feel a little more comfortable and not so weary of like having to pick between the two or kind of navigate having to invite one or the other or whatever. Like, I think we just need to figure out a way for the cast to be able to feel cohesive, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. Maybe that's bringing in a couple of newbies into the show, and kind of transitioning the focus onto kind of a different dynamic. And I don't know, maybe Tom goes to Valley and Ariana stays on Vanderpump Rules, or Kristen's there, so I don't know if she would be willing to film with Tom really, but at least that relationship ended many, many years ago versus Ariana's. So I don't know. I think it's a really interesting question, and I'm very curious to see what happens. This is, I feel like, the second season in a row that we've had this question at the end of the season, because after last season we were like, where does it go from here?
Yeah.
But this definitely is not sustainable. So something has to happen. And I think maybe we'll see at the reunion kind of how the dynamic is, and that will give us some answers as to kind of where we are currently going into filming. So I
Yes.
don't know, but we'll see.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Um, but speaking of the Valley, let's move on to the Valley. We are what, just 3 episodes in? It feels like so much more than that based on
Mhm.
everything that's happened. But what are your thoughts on the show so far as a whole?
I've really been enjoying it. I only knew one of the couples, of one of the couples going into it. Like I had heard of Jax and Brittany, even though I hadn't actually watched them before. But I just know with all their media coverage and everything. So I really have learned a lot about this dynamic of the friendships and all this stuff, like from just watching this season so far. And there's drama. Like this friend group or these people, like there's so much going on here that like every episode I feel like there's something else going on that like didn't expect to hear about, and I feel like it's been giving us the entertainment, so I'm here for it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is so much better than I thought it would be. Like, I had pretty low expectations, I think, for it, especially after the first trailer that they released, because it really was focused on kind of like, oh, here's, silly, like, middle-aged people trying to parent for the first time. And like, it didn't seem like there was a lot of drama between the cast. It seemed like it was a lot of more like, I guess, marital issues that were going to be the focus of the drama. But then very quickly, they came out with a second trailer a couple weeks later, and it alleviated a lot of my fears. Like, it was like, okay, there's a lot of drama here. And then there was so much more even in the first like 3 episodes than I ever could have thought this quickly there would be. So yeah, I'm in. I'm all in. It's really, really good. Now you mentioned that you were only really familiar with Jackson Brittany going into it, but I know we talked a little bit about this before, but for those who don't know, Kristen, Jackson, Brittany were all on Vanderpump Rules for the first 8 seasons. And then, well, Brittany came in later, but Kristen and Jax were there from the beginning. And then in 2020, in the middle of the Black Lives Matter movement, former Vanderpump Rules cast member Faith Stowers came out with kind of, and this was a news story at the time, but it really didn't get too much coverage. But then, a couple years later in 2020, when everybody's kind of re-examining a lot of old issues, old comments, tweets, whatever, Faith kind of re ignited that conversation based on some accusations that Stassi and Kristen had made about her in the past. Faith is a black woman, and they had accused her of being another black woman who was caught on security camera stealing something, and they thought it was Faith for some reason. And to make a long story short, it was not Faith, and they were wrong, and they apparently had to like called the police and told them they thought it was Faith, and Faith could have gone to jail for it, and it wasn't her. And so then once Faith kind of talked about this again, Stassi and Kristen were fired from Vanderpump Rules. And then shortly after that, Jax, who wasn't directly a part of that, but had also made some comments kind of agreeing with Stassi and Kristen about it, like on Twitter, I think. And, based on some other stuff that Jax has done too, Jax and Brittany were also fired shortly after that before season 9 started filming. So that was a lot. But based on all of that, now 4 years later, they're back on the show. Um, do you think that Bravo was wrong for putting them back on TV, or now that some time has passed, Kristen does seem very apologetic for her actions there. Do you think that, it's okay for her to be forgiven and, for them to be back on TV now?
Yeah, and I actually didn't realize the extent of what happened in the past. I hadn't watched Vanderpump then, so I didn't know all that was going on. So it's definitely interesting to hear. I feel like that is not good what happened in the past, and like obviously those racist comments, and like that is it's hard to like necessarily like forgive that, but I think it's like in a way like yes, she's if she's done work and done all this stuff to better and like understand and all this stuff, like being very very forgiving to Faith and all the stuff that was going down with that. I think that it is fine that she's back on the show. I mean, we're getting some good drama from it, but I think in general, like I don't want to hold the grudge there forever. Like 4 years is kind of a long time now that like there's been time for her to grow and change from this. So and Jax, I don't know if he's really changed that much, but I don't think he's changed. So that one, I don't know how I feel about him, but I'm glad that Kristen's on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. Like, I feel like it's almost not my place to even like forgive or not forgive. I know that Faith at the time said that I think she was more open, it seemed like, to forgiving Kristen and Stassi because Kristen had personally contacted Faith and apologized, and it did really seem like Kristen kind of understood what she did wrong, I think, whereas Stassi maybe like didn't quite get it still and didn't like she publicly apologized but maybe didn't like personally apologize to Faith. So and Stassi's obviously like that's a different issue because Stassi's not on the show now. But Kristen, yeah, I mean like I guess as long as like we do see some growth from her, which it seems like from what she's saying that she has done the work to grow from it and move on. And um, I'm glad that they're talking about it. Like, I'm glad they're breaking the fourth wall on this show and actually like mentioning the firing. And it gave Kristen the opportunity to talk about it publicly and to, share her thoughts on it. And so I think that they are handling it the right way, whether it's actually ethically okay for them to have brought her back, I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm glad that it's not just kind of like being glossed over and ignored and pretended like it never
Yeah.
happened. Now Faith has you know, in the news here, just a couple of days ago, um, filed a lawsuit against Bravo and Evolution Media and NBC Universal, in regards to everything that happened and during her time on Vanderpump Rules. And so, early stages of that, we'll see what happens there. But it certainly does not seem like Faith is necessarily okay with Kristen coming back onto the show. I think it's maybe reopened some wounds for her there. And she is starting her own podcast as well. So I'm sure she will talk about it and we will discuss that when it comes out in the news. Now, getting into some of the other couples, Molly, do you have any early favorites? We have Jackson, Brittany, Kristen and Luke, her boyfriend, Janet and Jason, Michelle and Jesse, and Nia and Danny. Do you have any early favorites, least favorites, standouts? What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I we don't see a ton of Nia and Danny, I feel like so far. But they're because they're the like, least problematic couple, I feel like, of everyone. So I mean, I kind of want to say them because like they're the best ones. But in terms of drama, obviously, I feel like Jax and Brittany are bringing that to the season. Same with Kristen and Luke. I feel like Luke has been like he's brand new, but I mean to their friends, not like the show is brand new, so everyone's brand new. But like in general for their friend group, I feel like Luke has been kind of surprising me more than I thought. Like I didn't know he was gonna have more to say. Like I feel like it was going to be Kristen overpowering things and like Luke wouldn't really say much, but I feel like he has a personality which has been fun to watch. I don't know if they're going to last, but it's been fun to watch them interact.
Yeah, I agree. We've seen a lot more of Luke than I thought we would. Like, I thought Luke would kind of be a little shy in front of the camera, especially at first. Like, I thought maybe by the end of the season he'd come out of his shell a little bit, but he's really, he's defended Kristen at that last dinner, the Capri dinner. He really like got into it almost with Jesse in Kristen's honor. So that surprised me, and Jack kind of put Luke into the drama by bringing Kristen's ex around the guys, and he kind of obviously put Luke in a situation where he kind of had to stick up for himself and have an opinion there. Um, yeah, I'm really interested to see how specifically Jackson, Brittany, and Michelle and Jesse during the season, because we know that both of those couples have separated since filming. So those are the kind of interesting couples that I'm watching closely to kind of see their dynamics, to see if there's any clues we can pick up on that, well, I think in both cases it's pretty obvious, but yeah, I think those are kind of going to be our most dysfunctional couples. And then I think Janet and Jason are probably my favorite couple so far. I really like them together. Janet has been kind of in the background of Vanderpump Rules for years and years and years because she's very close friends with pretty much all the females cast on the show. And so I kind of was aware of Janet. Janet actually co-hosted Sheena's podcast with her for a long time. So they've been like best friends for many years. But it's been fun like to get to know her, and Jason seems like a good guy too. So they're probably the most functional couple, I would say.
I like them too.
um now I just brought up the fact that Jax brought Kristen's ex around Luke during their guys' night. Do you think Jax was wrong for doing that, or was it fair game because apparently Jax, I guess, is close with Kristen's ex still? So is it okay for him to bring him around, or was he just kind of stirring the pot?
I think he was stirring the pot there and he was like playing dumb, being like, oh, I didn't realize this is gonna be such a problem. Like, obviously, you just wanted to cause drama. But I mean, it did cause drama, so there's that. And he also did say to Luke, like, hey, I invited him, like, he didn't just show up out of nowhere kind of thing. But definitely, like, I understand why Jax was like, well, she's kissed everyone or hooked up with every one of my friends. Like, why do I have to be so picky with my friends? And then I won't have friends. So like in a way, I'm like, okay, he makes a point there, but also like it's fresh. Like this was like the most recent ex, and this is like a brand new boyfriend. Like maybe wait a year and then maybe it'd be okay, but not right now. So, and also, of course, like Kristen didn't want that to happen. So that was going to cause the drama there too.
Yeah, I think Jax 100% knew what he was doing. Like you can always tell when Jax does that, and then he's like, oh, I guess I was wrong. Like, yeah, I guess I'm stirring the pot. Like, he can kind of like just immediately like admits it after it happens, and it's too late to go back. So yeah, I mean, Jax knows what makes good TV, and I think 100% he was doing that to stir the pot, and
Yeah.
it worked. So, I mean, honestly, I feel like Luke should kind of be happy because like it made Luke look really good, and I
Yeah.
think pretty much everybody with half a brain cell like would be on Luke's side there. So I think Luke probably actually came up pretty good there. Like it gave him some, some camera time, and he looked really good at coming out of it. So if I were Luke, I'd probably be pretty happy about that actually that happened. And Kristen, I guess. But yeah, definitely that was starting. Um, Now the big drama that we just saw at the end of this last episode, that Kristen was being really attacked at that Capri dinner for allegedly spreading the rumor that Janet called Michelle a racist and a Republican. which I love that those two are just conflated at this point. Um, but who do you think is to blame in all of this? Because it really does seem like this game of telephone that that Michelle was talking with Janet, and then Janet told uh what's his name?
Zach.
Oh, sorry,
The
Zach.
Zach.
Thank you. And then Zach told Kristen, like it was this game of telephone. So who's to blame in that? And what do you think?
Yeah, this was a lot. This episode was like that dinner table and just everything that was coming up in that episode. I feel like I was trying to wrap my head around everything that was going on, and I was like, where did this start and what
Yeah.
why did this happen this way? Like I'm still not sure what I think. Like at this point I'm like no one's really trusting Kristen. And then Kristen's not like believing what anyone else is saying. She's like, they're all lying. So I'm like, is everyone lying here? Like, I don't know what the real story is, to be honest. Like, I think where my head is right now, like at this current moment, I would say that I think Kristen is fabricating the details of it and trying it to be so it's not all on her. And so that she's bringing in other people and trying to bring up maybe some little part of a conversation that was happening that she took it in a different way and then is creating the drama of it now. But I don't know entirely because I still I feel like it's a lot, but that's my thought right now.
Yeah, so my understanding of it so far is that Janet and Michelle were having a conversation about the Don't Say Gay bill in
Yeah.
Florida. And I guess Michelle was saying, "Oh, that protects kids." And then Janet was like, "No, it doesn't." And I guess that kind of disturbed Janet that Michelle was defending that. And then Janet, I guess, talked to Zach and kind of relayed that conversation. And then Zach was, I guess, talking to Kristen. And I think maybe Zach kind of maybe got the story wrong, or I don't know. Either Zach got it wrong or he relayed it correctly to Kristen. And then Kristen kind of like, I guess somehow conflated like maybe that it was homophobic, but I guess maybe then said racist instead. And that's, I guess, my understanding is that like I guess that she was like, well, anyone who supports that is probably a Republican. So like I guess like that's where that part of it came from. But then I think maybe like homophobic got mixed up with racist, and then there was that confusion because it was like, where did racist come from? And so maybe then that didn't immediately click to Janet that that was the conversation that was being referred to because that had nothing to do with racism specifically. So I don't know. But it seems like Janet did eventually figure it out because then in her confessional, she explained that story.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my understanding is that like maybe immediately at the time of that dinner, she had not put two and two together.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. So maybe in next episode we'll hear more of that going out down and like the conversations that they're having about that. But yeah, I feel like the racist that accusation like isn't true. Like the stuff they're talking about with the don't say gay rule, like the law and all that stuff, like that was definitely a conversation, but I don't think it's like right to call Michelle racist and a Republican if she's not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that the racist part got lost in translation somewhere. I think
Yeah.
that and I think that we kind of know where the Republican part came from, but the racist one somewhere along the line got confused.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'm sure there's more to come with that. I'm sure that is not the last we've heard of this argument. So, and it
Fair.
does seem like actually Michelle responded to someone in an Instagram story asking if she is friends with Kristen, and she said no. So it doesn't seem like that relationship gets repaired
Wow.
throughout the season. So,
Yeah.
um, now what are your predictions for the rest of the season? We're still pretty early on. So what do you think we're going to see moving forward?
Well, we already know about the two splits that come up, so I know that that's going to continue being a storyline and seeing those couples, Jackson, Brittany, and Michelle and Jesse, and seeing how they break up essentially throughout the season, which we're already seeing Michelle and Jesse go into couples therapy and like all that stuff. So they're already having trouble. And with Jackson Brittany, I feel like we haven't seen a ton of them fighting necessarily, but like there's always, I feel like, something that's going down with them that isn't necessarily the most healthy. But yeah, I definitely think that we're going to see a lot of those situations. But I also think we'll see more of the comments with Kristen and seeing how that goes, evolves like with those friendships or evolving to not become friends anymore. So I think those would be the main things that I would expect the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to see a lot with Jax and Brittany. I think just based on the trailer, it seems like there's a lot of scenes of them fighting that we have not seen yet. So I think that there's going to be a lot there. And then it seems like Kristen and Michelle have a lot of drama coming up. You know, there's that fight that we see in like the hallway of some hotel, it looks like maybe or something in the trailer, with Kristen and Michelle having a huge fight. So I think that those two relationships I think might kind of be the focus of the rest of the season, with Jesse and Michelle versus Kristen. It seems like something else happens that totally tears that friendship apart. So I'm curious to see what happens there. And then now moving forward to next season, like you said, they're obviously Jax and Brittany are separated, and Michelle and Jesse have split. So how do we move forward next season? In the show that's supposedly about couples, and two of the five couples are no longer together. So do we think that we will see them, both of those couples, navigate splitting up, or did maybe if they're not on good terms, at least like at least with Michelle and Jesse, it seems like that's kind of maybe on less good terms than Jackson and Brittany are right now. So do we think that they leave the show, or do we see them navigate that? How do you think we move forward for season two?
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be interesting. I feel like they'll probably have both Jax and Brittany still on and navigating that. But I feel like with Michelle and Jesse, maybe they'll only have one of them on it and like still have that like that family, but then like having only one of the parents. I feel like they would choose Michelle because of the drama if there's more drama with Kristen. But or they just would remove them overall. So I'm not sure. I feel like it would be interesting though to have like one like of those couples still there with like without their partner because then it could show like how they're navigating that like as a single parent and maybe they would go on dates and maybe they would show that but and that would be a lot I guess I don't know if they would do that yet in the seasons but I feel like that could be interesting too.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, like, especially because with Jackson and Brittany, like, we're invested in both of them at this point already, whereas Michelle and Jesse were really not. And so I think it's a lot easier for them to either, like, take one of them out or, like, not to necessarily, like, see that split navigated. I think we're okay, like, with not because we're just not that invested in them as a couple yet. And so I
Mhm.
think, like, we'd probably be fine with just one of them coming back, like you said, whoever maybe is more authentically connected to the group still, and seeing how they navigate, single parenthood. Like, I think that that would be an interesting enough story to see them, maybe if by that point, maybe or one of them's dating someone already, and we can see them in a new relationship, or whatever it is. But yeah, I think if I had to guess, both Jackson and Brittany will be back next season. They might even be together again. I wouldn't be shocked by that. But it'll be interesting to see where they're at. I wonder if there's a reunion for this season. It seems like the ratings have been really, really good so far, so I wouldn't be surprised if they got a reunion. So, but I'm interested to see kind of where, especially what kind of terms Jesse and Michelle are on right now, because we really haven't heard a ton from them since the split was announced. Um, but moving on, speaking of splits, we have a big split coming up here pretty soon on Summer House. So, Molly, I know this was your first time ever watching Summer House. So, what were your thoughts on the show?
Yeah, no, I am really excited to be watching this season just because I knew like going into it, like with all the Carl and Lindsay drama coming up of like knowing that they were splitting and then they were still filming in the show and they were still together and then the end they broke up. So I was really intrigued to see that dynamic unfold. And then also it's been fun to see the rest of the cast that I didn't know before watching this season and how those relationships are like with there's also a marriage with Kyle and Amanda, and then also um in terms of like there's single people, but then there's some people who are dating. There's different dynamics in the show, which is fun to watch too, which is like I feel like I didn't necessarily know that like before going into it. Like I knew they all were in the Hamptons together, but I didn't know every single person who was on the cast and like their relationships to each other. So it's been fun to watch for me. I like it a lot. Like I really now I'm gonna be watching every season. I might even go
Yeah.
back and watch from the beginning because now I want to know it all.
You should, especially season three on. They're all so good. Like the first couple, like you'll see, like the cast is super different than it is now, because it took a couple seasons for them to really get the cast right. But once they did, especially like I would say once they brought in Paige and Hannah Burner, who I think you're familiar with,
Yeah.
that really brought the show to life. Those two, I think, just brought the show to like a really, really good place. And ever since then, it's been so good season after season.
Yeah.
But what were your thought? We have two new guys this season, Jesse Solomon and West Wilson. What were your thoughts on them? And I guess since everybody's new for you, kind of do you have any favorites, just overall?
Yeah, well, I enjoyed seeing how the people who are like the original, I guess, or like the previous cast members interacting with Jesse and Wes. Like in particular, it was fun seeing Sierra and Wes together because I think they're actually a really cute couple. I'm rooting for them, but Jesse, he's just kind of like it's kind of funny. I mean, he's bringing some Jewish representation to the show because he talked about
Mm-hmm.
his bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
But also I don't know if he's the best example because he's a fuckboy, but like he's just living life. But it's kind of fun to see how they all get along, and there hasn't been like any drama with them, which is good, I guess. Like they seem like they're kind of just trying to be cool and like not cause any drama within the group. Or Jesse a little bit of drama because he was trying to hit on Paige and she's taken, but like not like major drama. That was kind of just subtle. But in general, I think that it's been fun, and I really like. I would say that my favorite is Paige.
Me
She
too.
and Sierra, but um, yeah. So those are my thoughts so far on those people.
Yeah, no, Paige is my favorite too. I love Paige. I saw, and I have to say that I stole this from another podcast that I was listening to, but he was saying that Paige, like when you watch Paige, it's like I laugh at Paige when I'm watching it as if like she's my friend. Like I'm like I literally like when I watch her, it's like oh my God, I feel like I'm just watching like my friends like have fun at this in a summer house. Like I think that's what I love about this show is that it really does like I feel like this cast like I just really really connect with this cast. I feel like more than Vanderpump Rules even. Like I just feel like I want to be friends with all of them. Like where I don't feel that when I'm watching Vanderpump Rules. I'm like thank God I don't know any of these people besides Ariana. But
Yeah.
with this one I'm like God, I really like all the, especially like I think the female cast. I really like all of them, and even the guys just are fun. Like they just seem like they all have like a fun time, and they can all get along. And there is drama, but like at the end of the day, they still can throw these fun parties and all really uh just like kind of laugh together. And I like that. And I think that these new guys, Jesse and Wes, like they just fit in so seamlessly. And Summer
Yeah.
House has had a little bit of a hard time casting guys in the past that have stuck. A lot of the guys over the past couple seasons have just kind of like been one season wonders and not really brought anything to the show. But Jesse and West, I think both, especially West, but really both of them have just fit in so well, and I think the audience is really connected with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Now Carl and Lindsay have, as we know, now split and ended their engagement. So we knew obviously going into this season that that had happened, and when the news first came out, we talked about it, and it seemed like most of the audience was on Lindsay's side at the time and thought it was really not great of Carl to call the cameras back to film their engagement ending and their breakup moment. Has watching this season changed your opinion at all in terms of whose side you're on and your perspective of their split?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know previously like what their relationship entailed entirely of like prior to their troubles that they're experiencing right now in this season. But I definitely feel like I'm siding a little bit more with Carl now because of the conversations that we're seeing. And then, like, having those fights, all of them are starting, like, from Lindsay accusing Carl of not being sober, and Carl's been sober. And this has been, like, an ongoing thing for him that, like, it's really sensitive for him to have that. And then when he tries to defend himself and he's asking Lindsay a question, like she gets so defensive and then takes it in like a extreme way. It sounds like I don't know. We're not seeing those like the actual fighting of what's going on here. So I feel like seeing that, like it's definitely interesting having that side of it now of seeing like, okay, well, it kind of was Lindsay doing this stuff that like Carl was not okay with, and that's what's ultimately, I'm sure. I mean, there's probably other things coming out down the line too, but like this is stuff that's been reoccurring already. Like 2 weeks in a row, they fought about the same thing. So I think that it's definitely making me feel more like more on Carl's side, I would say.
Yeah, I think what's most confusing to me is that Lindsay in so many interviews talked about how shocked she was by the split and that she didn't see it coming, and she even said something like, "Oh, like you would think we were fighting all summer, but we really weren't." And then like I'm watching this season, I'm like, "You thought you weren't fighting this summer? Like we're what, 3 weeks
Where were
in, and
you?
every
Yeah.
single one you've had a huge blowout fight with Carl basically."
Yeah.
Like, how do you, how, I don't understand how she thought that this wasn't going to be shown. I don't know. It's really weird to me. And look, like that doesn't mean that she wasn't blindsided by the split. Like I still think that that's very possible that she thought, okay, like we're having some troubles, but like so did Kyle and Amanda the summer before their wedding, and they still got married and you know and got over it. So I think maybe she kind of thought that that was what was going to happen, was that, okay, we had a little bit of a hard summer, but we'll still get married. But for her to say now, like, oh yeah, we pretty much got along all summer in all these interviews, and then that turns out not to be the case at all. So that's a little weird to me. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I do see both sides to a certain extent, but I do find myself being more on Team Carl just because I think it's pretty wrong for Lindsay to be accusing Carl of not being sober when he is sober.
Yeah.
And then for her to come back and later say, like, oh, I never thought that he wasn't actually sober, when that is quite clearly what she was questioning or accusing him of. And so it seems like there's a little bit of revisionist history there. And I could see, I do believe that Carl probably has a little bit of an angry, mean side that when they're at home that we don't necessarily see on camera, that he really tries hard to hide. I do think that's very possible that Lindsay could be like, this is really frustrating because you're never going to see the side of him that only I see.
Yeah.
But I still think that she went too far in that accusation.
Yeah. I agree. And we'll just have to wait to see what else happens throughout the season.
Yeah,
But
there's a long season ahead.
we already know it's ending in a breakup. So keeping with that, I like watching it with that lens, like is definitely interesting. Like whenever they're talking about the wedding, I'm like cringing a little bit, like, oh no, like don't talk about the wedding. Like
I
or like
know, I
the
know.
stuff that they're talking about with like Kyle being the flower boy, like it kind of like makes me laugh now, like thinking like, well, he didn't even have to do it. So
I know I'm kind of sad we never saw that though. I think that
yeah.
would have been they would have really gone all out with that. You just know they would have with his outfit and that would have been funny. I'm glad that it didn't happen because this would not have been a happy marriage, I don't think. But based on what we're seeing, but I really do wish we would have gotten that.
Yeah. Well, maybe
Uh,
they'll do like a skit of it or something for us to
yeah,
see.
I hope so. Next summer they need to do a little like I don't know. I don't know how that would come into effect without being totally offensive to them having like a wedding themed party. But somehow, some way, I need to see what that would have looked like.
Yeah.
But I think somehow, like knowing that they're broken up, Carl and Lindsay has made the season like easier to watch, maybe because I think if they were still together, this would have been kind of really uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
And I feel like knowing though that they don't end up together has made it a little bit more like palatable to be able to watch and be like, okay, at least we know that this has a happy ending, I guess, considering what would have probably been their marriage. Um, but yeah, it would have been a totally different watch if they were still together.
At least they got out of it before lawyers had to get involved.
Exactly, exactly. Now onto a couple that I think would actually make a very happy couple, Sarah
Mhm.
and West. What do you think of them? I know you said you think they're really cute together. Do you think that they should make it official? Do you hope that they are dating?
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know if you've heard any spoilers of this or if they're still together or not, or if they're allowed to share that.
They've both been very coy in their answers about it. So
Okay,
I don't
so
think
we
they're allowed
don't know yet, which I feel like is probably because of the show being aired right now. They wanted to still keep it secretive. But I hope they're still together because I think that they're really good. Like from the first episode when Wes came in, like she was cooking with him in the kitchen. Like I think they've had really sweet moments together. And like I think like the first date, like we got to see like Wes was really nervous. Like it's really nice. Like I think that they're going at a good pace. Also, like what Sierra was saying, like she doesn't want to rush into it, like having sex, yeah, which I think is like good for her. Wes is now like seeming like he wants to have sex though, and he's like, "Come on, like let's do it." But at least he's respecting Sierra's boundaries for that, so that's good too.
Yeah, I think that, and they've talked about it on the show and on the after show and everything that Sierra's past with Austin Kroll, who I know you don't know the whole history here, but 2 years ago, 2 summers ago. Um, so Austin is on Southern Charm and he's Craig's best friend. And so they both, there's this spinoff Winter House. And it was kind of like the first season was mostly a mashup between like Southern Charm cast and Summer House cast. And they all were like in Vermont and like the winter lodge for 2 weeks and Austin and Sierra hit it off, and they had a relationship, a short-lived relationship. And then it ended really badly because Austin also then hooked up with Lindsay, and and so that put Lindsay and Sierra against each other, and it was a mess. It was just a whole mess. And Austin is the number one F boy in the group, and that I think really kind of like scarred Sierra a little bit because she is constantly like asked about that relationship and people were saying, "Oh, she was so dumb for believing Austin and staying with him and fighting over him." And so I think that that really kind of like messed with her head in terms of getting into another relationship in the house. And so I totally get why she's taking it slowly with West, and she doesn't want to kind of fall into that same trap with someone who, for all she knows, at this point, she just met him. He could be the same way and just playing her. So I hope now that time has passed and she knows that that's not the case with West, or it doesn't seem like it is, then I hope she's able to kind of like let her guard down a little more with him and feel okay entering into an actual relationship with him. But if I had to take a wild guess, I feel like they're probably not really like fully together at this point. Like I think they're probably very close friends, but that's just my guess is that I think that I feel like they're probably not dating, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I wanted them to be together, but obviously it's like they're in the show right now together. So it's like hidden, like they're always seeing each other. So it's like summer camp, but we'll
Exactly.
see.
Exactly. Well, any predictions for the rest of this season of Summer House now that we are, I think we're less than halfway through still. So we still have
Yeah.
quite a bit to go.
I mean, we're obviously gonna see more with Carl and Lindsay, um, and all that. But I feel like maybe also seeing how Sierra and West continue, or maybe what you're saying, maybe they don't continue, but we'll see how they evolve in their relationship. And in general, maybe I don't know if like is Craig gonna come back again? I feel like it was fun when he came in, so it was like having Paige and Carl and Craig together so that they're
Hmm.
not always just apart because hearing about him is nice, but like we want to see him too. But overall, I don't know what else to expect, to be honest. What are you thinking is gonna happen?
Yeah, I think Craig usually comes like for maybe like 2 weekends a season, it
Okay.
seems like the last couple years. So I would expect him to maybe come back like towards the end of the season for another weekend. That wouldn't surprise me. I was really glad to see Andrea last week. I love Andrea and I miss him on this show. He was such a like he would give all the girls coffee and tea in bed in the morning every morning. He was just such a fun presence to have there. And I feel like West kind of like gives that same energy, that fun energy that we missed last season without Andrea. So I was really glad to see him here. And I hope that we see more of him, but I don't know if we will. But yeah, I think I'm interested to see Kyle and Amanda's relationship the rest of the season too, because we've
Yeah.
seen them have a little bit of tension, and it seems like they came into the season probably not in a great place because Amanda seems to be like very short have a really short fuse with him this year for some reason. So I'm curious to see if we kind of get a little bit more of the backstory maybe as to why she is so little patience with Kyle this year. And other than that, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we haven't seen Gabby a lot the last few weeks. So I hope we she comes back and we see more of her. And I don't know if we'll see Danielle dating at all this year. I don't know. But yeah, it's been a really, really good season so far. So I'm excited for the rest. And then moving into next season, it'll be the first one with Carl and Lindsay post split. How do you think that they're going to handle that? Will they be okay being in the same house together? We're gonna have kind of like a Tom Mariana issue on our hands. What do you think they're gonna have to do for next season?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe if they both really do want to come back, like hopefully it's not going to be as hostile as with Tom and Ariana, but I feel like maybe they'll have one of them, or maybe having them separate weekends. That might be complicated, but like they could have them like they come in different times so they're not overlapping with each other. Which actually that's probably easier doing that on this kind of show than versus like on Vanderpump because they're all kind of hanging out together where they live already, but this is they're going to the house. So I think that could be a possibility. I'm also curious to see like how I mean, obviously then there's gonna be more time than there was, or I don't know how yeah, from like when the breakup happened with Ariana and Tom to their filming versus this breakup to the next time they're filming. Like there's a little bit more of the space there, so maybe they will be a little bit more cooled off and not as much drama, maybe. But we'll have to see because if either of them started like dating anyone else, like on the show, like that would cause a lot of drama. So I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, no, and that's the big point that I was gonna bring up is that there is so much more time here that will have passed that I do think that they'll be able to coexist a lot more easily than Tom and Ariana have. Because it'll kind of basically be like skipping the first season of Vanderpump Rules post split and then moving into the second one, which, a year later. Because this split happened the weekend after they stopped filming Summer
Yeah.
House last
Yeah.
season. So it'll be almost a full year by the time they would start filming for season 9. So I do think that that is a huge difference there and will make it a lot easier because they will have had so much time to process the breakup. And also, look, it was a breakup, but it was a pretty normal breakup. Like, yeah, it was close to the wedding, they were engaged. So, that took it obviously to another level, but there wasn't cheating that we know of. It certainly wasn't cheating with her best friend. It's just a different situation that I think is a little bit easier to move on from, probably, than what Ariana went through. And I also think Carl, I just feel like in general, is the type of person, from what we know, to be a little bit more respectful, I think, than Sandoval. Like, I don't think of him as a narcissist in the same way. So I think that they will hopefully be able to coexist. Maybe they'll, like you said, maybe they'll kind of, at least in the beginning, do separate weekends or something like that. Or I don't know what they'll have to do, but I think that they can both come back onto the show and not have to choose one or the other.
Yeah. I agree.
So we will see. And we have a lot more of all three of these shows coming up here for the rest of the season. So we will certainly keep you all updated as all of these seasons come to a close. And thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for supporting us for this whole first season of our new podcast. We've had so much fun doing this over the last year, and we hope to continue for many, many more years to come and many more seasons to come. And we will certainly keep you all updated as we approach season 2. So, have a great next couple of weeks while we're going to be off, and we will see you all towards the end of April. So thank you all so much for listening. Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.